All right, I tell you what, instead of pacing around out here, yelling and screaming, hooting and hollering, complaining, crying, overreacting, exaggerating, all the stuff you guys keep saying in the comments, instead of doing all that, how about I sit my happy ass down right here and give you a completely useless, pointless, meaningless, total waste of time video and tell you the way too early 2021 top 25 for college football post signing day edition. Let's go. Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou. I'm live for you on LouTube today. Hey, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Also, in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true. And some of them are even watchable. Now, there's a lot of different reasons why a video might be watchable. Maybe it's just a good, entertaining video. Maybe you learned something. Maybe the video is so bad or so wrong that it makes it watchable. That might be the category this video falls into. I'm going to give you my first top 25 for the 2021 college football season. I know a lot of people put these polls out constantly or these rankings out constantly or whatever in the offseason. And I agree. Generally, they're meaningless. I mean, so you can tell me in the comment section if you want. I agree. But everybody does it. It gives us something to talk about. And I only do 3 of these. I don't update this thing constantly throughout the offseason for no reason. I do 3 offseason polls a year. I do one after signing day. The first one, that's going to be this one. I then do one after all the spring games have been completed and we get a chance to at least see potentially what some of these teams might look like in 2021. You got teams with new quarterbacks, teams with new coaches, teams with new offensive philosophies, new staffs, whatever the case may be. Spring practice or a spring game isn't, 100% accurate or indicative of what we're going to see from a team in the fall, but it's our best chance to see what a team potentially might look like in the fall, especially we've got some key changes going on, and we've got some of that all throughout the top 25 this year. So I'll do a second poll like I do every year after all the spring games have been completed. And then I do a third and final preseason top 25 poll or ranking, whatever you want to call it, towards the end of the summer. Usually a month or so before the season actually starts, I'll put out the final poll or ranking. Now, what do I use? What do I look at? What do I go by? What are the qualifications or whatever that I try to use to put this poll together for post-signing day? Well, clearly I look at the signing day class. Now, not very many true freshmen have meaningful impacts on a team. They just don't. Now, we're seeing a lot more now than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. But still, overall, the number of freshmen incoming that impact the team their freshman year is still pretty small, but it can be significant depending on the player and the team you're talking about. So clearly, I'll look at signing day rankings, who finished where, both nationally and within a conference. You can't help but use what you saw last year. Now, I know last year doesn't necessarily foretell what you may see this year, but depending on the team, the situation, and the circumstances, it can give you, in some cases, a pretty good idea of how a team may fare this year as opposed to last year. You also have certain teams that over the last 5, 10, 15 years, if they've had the same coach, the same system, the same philosophy, the same overall recruiting, and they finished in the top 5 or the top 10 almost every single year, it's a pretty good indication they're probably going to finish in the top 5 or 10 again the following year. So while you might not know whether they finished first or second or 7th or 8th or whatever, you get a pretty good indication by looking at what a team did last year, who they lost, who they have coming back. And that brings me to the third thing that I usually look at when I try to determine a preseason poll after National Signing Day: overall team talent, right? There's a couple of different ways you can judge this or look at this. You can watch the games, which I do. I watch a lot of football. You can look at the 24/7 talent index, and which basically averages the last 4 recruiting classes that a team has had. So I look at all of those things. I don't give all the weight to any one of those things. I do my best to look at them all, and then I try to come up with at least a somewhat reasonable top 10 or top 25 poll. Those are some of the criteria I'll look at when developing this poll. All right, let's jump right in and get started. I'm going to do this the same way I always do it. I will describe why I have teams ranked within my top 10. I'll show you 11 through 25, but I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail on why I have a certain team ranked 18th instead of 16th or whatever. The video would be 2 hours long. The biggest complaint I ever see about rankings or polls in general is that we don't know why people are ranking teams where they do. So I try my best to explain in every ranking video that I do, when it comes to the top 10 anyway, why I have certain teams ranked where I do, and I'll do that in this video as well. I'm going to start at number 10 and work my way down to number 1. And then at the end of the video, I will put the entire top 25 up on the screen, which will include teams 11 through 25. And I may say a few things about 11 through 25, but I won't be going through team by team like I do in the top 10. All right, let's get started. Here we go. My top 25, way too early, pointless, meaningless, useless preseason ranking, post-signing day edition for 2021. We're going to start with the top 10. Number 10. I've got Notre Dame. I know they lose Ian Book. They recruit well. They always have good offensive lines. They always have good defensive lines. They play very disciplined. They never seem to have a terrible season. Brian Kelly did have that one year where they went like 3-9 or something. That was a complete anomaly. If you look at Notre Dame's record under Brian Kelly, it's filled with 10-plus win seasons. They've made the playoffs, 2 out of the last 4 years. A really, really good team. They don't really rebuild, they reload. Anytime you have a QB change, there's going to be some questions there. They lost their defensive coordinator. No big deal. They brought in the defensive coordinator from Cincinnati. Cincinnati might have had, they did have a top 10 defense last year. Cincinnati had the best defense of any team Georgia played last year, and that includes Alabama. Now, Alabama's defense was much better at the end of the season than it was when Georgia played it towards the beginning of the season. So maybe you make an argument that overall Alabama was better by the time the season ended, and you're probably right. But Cincinnati, really, really good defense. Notre Dame gets their defensive coordinator away, brings him to South Bend. I'm no Notre Dame fan. I don't think Notre Dame will be making another trip to the playoffs this year. And if they do, we all know they'll get humiliated like they always do. But I'm giving them a little bit of respect here for consistently winning 10-plus games. At least it seems that way. And they did make the playoffs this past year. That has to count for something. I've got them at number 10 in my first 2021 preseason poll. At number 9, I've got Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a team that surprised me last year. Talent-wise, they've been pretty good for several years now. They just haven't been able to put it together. They've had Kellen Mond there at quarterback. He was so inconsistent. Would look amazing one game, would look terrible the next. He put it together last year. He avoided that game where it just looked like he didn't know what he was doing. And he had had that type of game almost every single year before at Texas A&M. They put it together last year, only losing the one game to Alabama. Now, they did get blown out. There was some argument towards the end of the season whether or not they should have made it into the playoffs. Bottom line is, wouldn't have mattered. No one was beating Alabama. We saw that play out. Texas A&M had a chance during the season and got blown out by 28 points. Texas A&M did have a good year. They lose Kellen Mond. They got to replace him. Jimbo Fisher, he knows how to win a national title. He's done it before. And there aren't too many head coaches that can say that. There aren't. Count the number of head coaches coaching right now that have won national titles. It's not very many. He's one of them. That has to count for something. They recruit well every single year. They're in a really tough division out there in the SEC West. They got to face, of course, Alabama and LSU. Ole Miss with that offense. Arkansas is moving forward, it appears, although they're still a few steps back, I would argue. Auburn rebuilding with a new coach. But Texas A&M, probably the second best team in the West heading into 2021, depending on how much better LSU can get this year compared to last year. But I've got them at number 9 in this first preseason ranking. Number 8, Iowa State. Another team consistently good, not great until last year. They were a great team last year. Came up a game short of winning the Big 12 and making a playoff or anything like that, but they had a really, really good season. You can't knock them. They've got almost everybody coming back on that team. Matt Campbell has decided to stay in Iowa State yet again. I don't know why, but he did. He decided to stay. They beat Oregon in the what did they beat Oregon in the Rose Bowl? Was it the Rose Bowl? What did they beat Oregon in? Anyway, they beat Oregon in a bowl game. It wasn't even close, 34-17. Iowa State is going to be a really, really good team again in 2021. Are they going to win the Big 12? I don't think so, because we still have another Big 12 team to talk about it within this top 10 here. I'm pretty high on this coming year. But Iowa State's not falling off the map this year, I don't think. Matt Campbell has proven that he can put a consistently good team on the field. He's also proven that he can compete and hang with Oklahoma. They were the second best team in the Big 12 last year, clearly, right? And they're going to be good again in 2021. So I feel like this is a fair ranking for them here. Are they traditionally a top 10 team? No. But they were really good last year. They finished in the top 10 last year. They deserved to finish in the top 10 last year. They competed with Oklahoma last year. They've got a really, really good young up-and-coming coach, and they return a lot of talent from last year's team. I've got them at number 8 in my preseason poll. Number 7, North Carolina. People have been waiting for what seems like forever for a team in the ACC to challenge Clemson. Can it be North Carolina in 2021? I think it can. Will it? I don't know. We'll hold off on that and see some spring ball and things like that first. I do think that North Carolina right now is closer to Clemson than any team has been to Clemson since 2014, 2015 Florida State, a year or two after their national title, right? They're a really, really good team with a coach, again, that has won a national title, and there are not too many of those around. Sam Howell returns. They had a really, really young team last year, particularly on defense. All those guys are coming back. They do have to replace those running backs that put up 1,000,000 yards against Miami in one of the most embarrassing performances in the history of college football against the trash can known as the Miami Hurricanes. So they do have some work to do offensively to replace those guys. But Sam Howell, legitimate Heisman contender. Not suggesting he'll win it, but you look at any top 5, top 10 Heisman list, you're going to see Sam Howell on there. And again, Mack Brown has proven that he knows what he's doing. I think Sam Howell will have a big year. I think North Carolina is going to be a legitimately good team. Last year, this time, I did not buy into the North Carolina hype. I thought they were a year away being this year. They proved that they were a pretty good team last year. They did not live up to expectations, though, in my opinion. A humiliating loss to Florida State. And that, more than anything else, is really what North Carolina has to avoid this year. Forget Clemson for a second. Assume North Carolina is going to lose to Clemson at some point. You can't lose the Florida State type game this year and get away with it. You just can't. That has to be behind you if you're North Carolina. If I live to be 500 years old, I won't understand how they lost that game. I just won't. Absolutely humiliating. You have to avoid that. If you lose to Clemson, no one's going to hate on you. Clemson's an amazing team with an amazing coach. They would be a dynasty. Hell, they are a dynasty. If it wasn't for the fact that Alabama is doing what Alabama is doing right now and for the last 15 years, we would be talking about Clemson as one of the best dynasties in college football history. When you look at what they've done in the playoff era, it's absolutely unbelievable. It's just unreal. So forget them for a second. You could lose to Clemson. That's not the end of the world. That's not embarrassing or humiliating. You have to avoid the letdown game against an inferior opponent. You cannot have a loss like you had last year against FSU. I think North Carolina, talent-wise, is legitimately a top 10 team. Again, I think they're closer to Clemson right now than anybody in the ACC has been for a long, long time. And I'm interested to see how that plays out this year between them and the Taters. I've got North Carolina at number 7. At number 6, Cincinnati. This is too high. I will admit this is too high. You can't help but feel bad, I think, for the group of 5 teams anymore. Cincinnati was a legitimately good team last year. I know they lost to Georgia in the Peach Bowl on a last-second field goal. If Cincinnati and Georgia played 10 times, they'd go 5-5, wouldn't they, last year? That was a great game. I'm obviously glad Georgia ended up winning. I'm a Georgia fan, but Cincinnati was a legitimately good team. Now, we talked about them losing their defensive coordinator to Notre Dame, and they're going to have to make sure that doesn't hurt them. Now, their defense was absolutely amazing last year. They had more All-Americans on that defense than Georgia did. Their secondary was good. They had one of the best defenses in America. Some good news for Cincinnati when their quarterback announced he was going to come back. So offensively, I would expect them to pick up where they left off this last season. We've seen some group of 5 teams have just sort of a one and done year where they're great for 1 year and then they kind of go away. We've seen other group of 5 teams, Central Florida, Boise State, be consistently good over an extended period of time. Cincinnati got a lot of hype last year. Cincinnati was really good the year before that, too. I think they only lost 1 game the year before. It was to Ohio State, 42-0. But point is, they've been good for several years now under Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell, another guy, I don't know. I can't believe this guy's still at Cincinnati. I can't believe somebody else hasn't gotten out and gotten him. But I'm giving Cincinnati some respect here. 6 in the preseason. This has a lot to do with how they finished last year. I told you, I consider all different things. So clearly you look at the recruiting or the talent index, you're not going to see Cincinnati anywhere in the top 10, top 15, top 20, or top 25. But they were great last year. The only loss was that Peach Bowl loss to Georgia. I like the quarterback coming back and I absolutely love Luke Fickell. I'm giving them some credit and some respect here, putting them at least in this preseason poll at number 6. Now, let's see some spring games. Let's see how some of these teams look. Maybe they bump down a little bit, but this is sort of just a salute to Cincinnati here. I'll give them my number 6 ranking here in this preseason poll. Top 5 time. Gets a little hard to do the top 5. I will say this. Every top 10 ranking, top 25 ranking, or poll, whatever you want to call it, is subject to debate. And there is no one poll that is right or wrong, or, this poll is accurate and that poll is ridiculous. Every poll is subjective, right? It's filled with opinion. In this case, my opinion. So, I've been doing these rankings for a long time. I don't expect everyone or anyone to agree with every single team and where I have them ranked within this ranking or any ranking that I ever do. But if you've got any other top 5 than this one, then you are wrong. You're just wrong. Now, you can debate the order of some of these teams within the top 5. But these are the top 5. If you've got a ranking out right now that's got anybody in the top 5 other than these 5 that I'm about to name, then it is wrong. It's completely wrong. At number 5, I've got Ohio State. Now, they recruit like mad, and they have absolutely dominated the Big Ten here lately, especially with Penn State taking a step back last year. Some people thought, myself included, that last year would be the year maybe that someone besides Ohio State got through. That somebody being Penn State. They, of course, had a miserable season. We'll see if they can rebound this year. Ohio State made the national title game, won a playoff game against Clemson before, of course, losing to Alabama in the national title game. But they recruit ridiculous every single year. They do lose Justin Fields to the NFL, so they're going to have to find a new quarterback. They've got a couple of young kids there that they like. They lose Chris Olave, the all-world wide receiver, but they get the other guy back. Garrett Wilson, is that his name? And their defense, which I think was a weakness in 2020, could be a strength in 2021. They've got to shore up that secondary. They'll be more experienced, I think, in 21 than they were in 20. Not really the Ohio State defense we're used to seeing in 2020. Let's just be real. They did play okay in that Clemson game. Actually, they played great. That Clemson game was by far the best game Ohio State's defense played all year, and it wasn't close. Their defense let them down multiple times in the regular season, and the offense bailed them out. And clearly the defense let them down in the national title game against Alabama. But let's be real, almost everyone's defense let them down against Alabama this past year. I think Ohio State will be better defensively in 2021. If they want to make the playoffs again, make a national title game again, the offense is going to have to keep on clicking, right? They're going to have to find that Justin Fields replacement. Now, Ohio State has not had a problem doing this in recent past. It seems like every quarterback Ohio State has had for the last 6 or 7 years has been a 4,000-plus quarterback with 40-plus touchdowns. Whether it's throwing, running, or a combination of the two, they've had no problem finding productive QBs, and there's no reason to assume that won't continue in 2021. The reason I have them at 5 and not any higher is because there is a little bit of question about the quarterback just because we've never seen him play. So, again, let's get through spring practice. Maybe we do some reevaluating, but right now I've got Ohio State at number 5. At number 4, I've got Oklahoma, and I went back and forth on Georgia and Oklahoma for 3 and 4. So if you want to put Georgia at 4, I don't have a problem where you put any of these teams within the top 5. You can put Georgia at 5 if you want. It's fine with me. But they should be in the top 5, as should all of these teams. But I got Oklahoma at 4. Spencer Rattler back. Oklahoma was probably the hottest team in college football besides Alabama at the end of last season. I think you would be lying if you didn't admit to yourself that you would have loved to have seen Alabama and Oklahoma play last year. I think Oklahoma would have, or I think Alabama would have won. I think Oklahoma's defense, although improved in 2020, would not have been able to do much, if anything at all, to slow down that Alabama offense that really no one was able to slow down at all last year. But it would have been an interesting matchup. Spencer Rattler started the year out slow last year, had a problem with turnovers early in the season. They lost 2 games that they shouldn't have lost, and everybody sort of wrote Oklahoma off and forgot about them. And then at the end of the year, you look down, and they were sitting there still with just the 2 losses, and they were in the Big 12 title game again. And lo and behold, they won it. So they just seem to do that every single year. Spencer Rattler comes back. A lot of pieces come back on that. I don't think anybody doubts Oklahoma's offense. I mean, they're sort of like Ohio State that way. You know, Ohio State, you just name the quarterback. It's going to be 4,000 yards and 40-plus touchdowns. Oklahoma has had Heisman-winning quarterbacks come and go. They had Jalen Hurts come and go. Now they put Spencer Rattler in there, and the offense just keeps on rolling and keeps on ticking. They've got a ton of weapons at the wide receiver position. They've got one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the Big 12. And their defense in 2021 is going to be the best Oklahoma defense we have seen in the playoff era, period. And it's not close. Do I think Oklahoma will have one of the best 5 or 10 defenses in America next year? No. But it's going to be way, way, way better than anything we've seen Oklahoma put on the field defensively in the playoff era. Way better. If Oklahoma's going to win a playoff game, finally, it's in 2021. An argument can be made that Oklahoma should be ranked number 1 for next year's preseason polls, especially if you want to look at just things like returning production from last year. They return so much on that team on offense and defense, it's ridiculous. I've got them at number 4. Again, if you want to have them at 3, at 2, at 1, 5, whatever, but I've got them at 4. Number 3, I've got Georgia. JT Daniels comes back. Almost everybody on the offense comes back. Georgia's defense is going to be good enough next year, I think. Again, I think you can make arguments to have Georgia number 1. I think you can make arguments to have Georgia number 2. You can also make arguments to have them 3, 4, or 5. And again, put them wherever you think they deserve to go, but I do think they should be in the top 5 somewhere. All the running backs come back. George Pickens at wide receiver. Kyrus Jackson at wide receiver. Darnell Washington at tight end. Blaylock is back from a knee injury from the year before. They're just loaded everywhere on offense. If it doesn't happen for Georgia offensively in 2021, then you have to ask yourself if it's ever going to happen under Kirby Smart, because this offense is absolutely insane from a talent perspective. We've seen JT Daniels and his ability to sling the ball around, which is something Georgia hasn't had, really, in my opinion, since Aaron Murray. JT Daniels is the best quarterback Georgia has had, in my opinion, since Aaron Murray. Again, I'm not the world's biggest Fromm fan. I know a lot of people love Jake Fromm, and that's great. This is just my opinion. I think JT Daniels is the best quarterback we've had since Aaron Murray. Now, he can't move, and that does worry me, especially against teams with elite and legitimate pass rushes. JT Daniels is not a dual threat. Never mind dual threat. He's not even that mobile. And you say, well, he was coming off of the injury. He'll be more mobile this year. Maybe he'll be a little bit more mobile in 21 than he was in 20. But go back to 2018, the year he played an entire season at Southern Cal. He wasn't mobile then with no injuries at all. So he's just not a mobile guy. He's just not a mobile QB. Now, I did see him spin out of the pocket a couple of times and extend some plays and sort of get creative, and that's great. And I hope he can do more of that. I hope he can pick up a first down with his legs at a crucial point in the game when he needs to. Those are things we'll find out as the season goes along. There's also some things he's got to work on. I like that he does not mind throwing the deep ball. I would like to see him get a little bit more on the deep ball. He throws a moon ball. He throws a ball way up in the air. If you watch some of the elite arms throw, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields this past year, if you're a Georgia fan, go back to Matthew Stafford. These guys can throw the ball 60 yards downfield, and the ball never goes more than 10 yards in the air. Never more than it's on a rope. JT Daniels, at least from what we've seen, can't do that. He can throw the ball a long way, but he puts a lot of air under it, and that can be dangerous. And we did see him underthrow some deep balls this past season. Now, he didn't have a lot of time to work with timing or work with the receivers on Georgia's roster last year because of our screwed up quarterback situation. We had Jamie Newman. He was supposed to be the starter, so he was getting all the reps. He quits a month before the season starts. JT Daniels wasn't cleared, so they got to get Stetson Bennett and DeJuan Mathis ready. They were both hot doo-doo confirmed. So JT Daniels didn't get a whole lot of time or reps or whatever with the receivers in the offseason or even during the season until week 4 or 5. So maybe you say, well, now with a whole offseason to work with him, he'll be better. And I hope everyone is right. I hope he is. Running back situation, I think Kendall Milton's the best running back on the team, but we get Zeus back, got James Cook back, got Kenny McIntosh back. We're not hurting for running backs. I think Georgia will have the best offensive line in the SEC, possibly the best defensive line in the SEC. And that's something I haven't been able to say as a Georgia fan in a long time. Been disappointed with Georgia's defensive lines lately. No reason to be disappointed this year. Absolutely loaded on the defensive front this year. Nakobe Dean, a potential All-American, in my opinion, at inside linebacker. The secondary is the question mark on defense. Not talent, but experience. The talent is there. And I love Lewis Seen, and he played a bunch last year, and I really, really like him. He's going to have to be the leader of the defense this year. He's really the veteran back there now. We lose Tyreek Stevenson, transfer. He goes to Miami. He wasn't great at UJ, but he had a lot of experience, and it would have been nice to have him in 2020. I'm not going to lie. Be nice to have him. It's kind of a head-scratcher why he transferred. Keely Ringo was healthy. He'll play. Got a lot of young talent in Georgia's secondary, but it's inexperienced. And unfortunately, they don't have a lot of time to get up to speed because Georgia plays Clemson week 1, and we know they're going to air it out. More on them in a second. But I've got Georgia at number 3. Number 2, I went with Clemson. This is really just a nod to Alabama for winning the national title. Alabama loses more going into next year than Clemson does. They both lose their quarterbacks, right? Trevor Lawrence gone. You got Mac Jones gone. Alabama loses their wide receivers and a running back. Clemson loses a running back but gets Justin Ross back at wide receiver. So Clemson gets I think all their starters back on defense. Clemson's going to be another great team. Breaking news! This just in. Oh my God! Alert your neighbors. I mean, Clemson's going to be an amazing team. And yes, they're replacing Trevor Lawrence with the young kid Ukulele. He got 2 starts last year, and he looked pretty good in both those 2 starts. I know he took a loss on the road at Notre Dame, but he had 400-something yards in that game. Wasn't his fault they lost, right? Then he started the following week against a nobody and had another monster game. He's the real deal. Anybody that thinks Clemson's going away because Trevor Lawrence left, I got bad news for you. The guy they brought in can sling the ball, and he can move, and he can run. ETN, in my opinion, the biggest loss for Clemson offensively. He was absolutely amazing. Travis Etienne was. You got to replace him at the running back position. But again, defensively, you return everyone, literally everybody. No starter is gone. You get all your starters back. Clemson's going to be really, really good again next year. And you got Alabama at number 1. They lose more than Clemson, but they won the national title. They've got Nick Saban. I mean, you don't really need to justify having Alabama number 1, but I do have them there. Now, of course, they lose, like I mentioned, Mac Jones. They lose Devontae Smith. They lose Jalen Waddle. They lose Najee Harris, right? But again, check the recruiting. We showed it at the beginning of the video. They've had the number 1 recruiting class, I think, 11 out of the last 13 years. They're absolutely loaded at every single position on both sides of the ball. And like Oklahoma, Alabama's defense will be better in 21 than it was in 20, in my opinion. They got to replace Surtain at corner. That's probably the biggest loss on defense. He was arguably the best corner in the nation and will probably be the first corner taken in this upcoming NFL draft, but they're loaded at talent there. It's just an experience issue. They'll find somebody to put there, I promise you. And I don't have to tell you that Nick Saban is a pretty good defensive mind. So even if there's a weakness on that defense, Nick Saban is pretty good at covering that up. I've got Alabama at number 1. So there it is. That's my first 2021 top 10 poll post signing day. I'll do another one when the spring games end, and I'll do my final preseason 21 poll about a month before the season kicks off. Be sure and let me know down below where you think I'm wrong. If you think I've got Georgia too high, I get it. I completely understand. If you think they shouldn't be in the top 5, though, you're football ignorant. So, don't just tell me, oh, this team, you got such and such too high. Well, tell me where I should have them then, okay? Don't just say Georgia's too high. Don't just tell me Iowa State's too high. Tell me where should they be? If I have them too high, where should they be? And who should be in their place? You give me your top 5 if you think mine is wrong, or your top 10, or whatever the case. But I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit this thumbs up button. Really helps me out a lot. Doesn't cost you anything or take any time to do. Hit the thumbs up. Share this video with your friends somewhere. I'm going to put the complete top 25 up on the screen now. All right, here you go. Here's 11 through 25. Now, again, I'm not going to go through this team by team like I did in the top 10, but just a few things I want to point out. We'll start with 11 through 15. I think it's very possible that several of these teams finished the season within the top 10, and I think there's arguments to be made for some of these teams to put them in the top 10 now. Southern Cal has been a team that I think people have written off, myself included. They're really close to being a really good team, I think. Now, they lost some wide receivers, but they get the quarterback back. We'll see what they can do. But them in Oregon, and I've got them at 11 and 12. The Pac-12 needs one of those two teams to have a great year, don't they? One of these two teams needs to go 12 and 0 or 11 and 1 and then win the Pac-12. The Pac-12 needs a playoff berth. And if they're going to get it, it's going to come from one of these two teams, in my opinion. I have Arizona State, I think, ranked, I do, at 22. I think they're a legitimate top 25 team. Utah, they've been good at times. Hard to find any team in the Pac-12, though, not named Southern Cal or Oregon, that's got really any shot at a playoff in 2021. And the Pac-12 needs that bad. Miami at 13, Florida at 14. Florida was better than Miami last year, no doubt about it. I think Miami will be better than Florida in 21. Miami does get most of their pieces back on offense, specifically De'Aaron King at quarterback, whereas Florida loses their entire offense. Quarterback, tight end, and top 3 wide receivers all gone. Their defense wasn't very good last year, and I don't have any reason to believe that's going to change as long as Todd Grantham remains their defensive coordinator. I don't think Florida's going to fall off the map like we've seen them do under a couple of previous coaching administrations where they have this weird 4-win season that seems to come out of nowhere. I don't see that happening for Florida, but if you watch the second half of their bowl game with Oklahoma, that's Florida's offense next year. Emory Jones at quarterback, who's at best is a 50% passer. He is not Kyle Trask. Now, he gives you a lot more with your legs than Kyle Trask, and I'm assuming Dan Mullen's going to have to rely on that pretty heavily next year. I don't think Florida's a top 10 team this next year, though. They, of course, have to play Georgia. They play LSU. Somebody else in the East could beat Florida next year, maybe a Mizzou, who I'm higher on than most people are for next year. Again, I don't think they're falling off the map. We're not going to see one of these 4-win seasons that they've had a couple of times over the last 10 years, but I could see maybe a 9-3 type season for Florida here. Penn State at 15, a wild card. I don't really know what to make of Penn State. I find it hard to believe they're as bad as they looked last year. Coronavirus, no offseason. Micah Parsons opted out, as did several other key players. They started off 0-5. It was absolutely horrible. I'm not as high on Penn State heading into this season as I was on them heading into last season before the coronavirus shook everything up. But it's just hard for me to believe that they're going to fall completely off the map. And when you look around the Big Ten, somebody's got to be the 3rd or 4th best team, and maybe it's Penn State. I like Wisconsin out of the Big Ten this year too. Indiana has been pretty good lately. What's Purdue going to do? Michigan, I'm not as high on as I have been in years past, so I don't know. Penn State at 15. Look at 16 through 20. There's Indiana. There's Mizzou, like I mentioned a minute ago. I'm admittedly higher on Mizzou than on probably anybody else you'll find. I don't think they're winning the East with the SEC or anything like that, but I could see an 8 or 9 win season for Mizzou. Iowa, I put them at 18 because doesn't Iowa just strike you as an 18th type of team? It just seems like every year they're 8-4 or 9-3 or something, and finishing somewhere between 15 and 20. I don't even know if that's true, but it just seems that way. So I've got them at 18. Wisconsin at 19. Now, this is a team that could finish much higher, much higher. They get that quarterback back who looked amazing in the first game last year and then got sick and then got hurt and all this kind of. Wisconsin had a weird year because of coronavirus. Texas at 20 is another wild card team. I have no clue what to make of Texas for 2021. I'm really going to have to look more into them. I have them at 20. This is based off of their talent alone, really. I don't know how much of a fan I am of Steve Sarkisian as a head coach. And they lose Sam Ehlinger, which, never really lived up to the hype or the potential, at least in my mind. But he was there a long time. You haven't had to worry about the quarterback position at Texas in 3 or 4 years. You got to worry about it now. We'll see. I got them at 20. Are they the 3rd best team in the Big 12? Are they the 4th? Are they the 5th best team in the Big 12? Can they surprise everybody, sort of like they did in 18, and maybe make the Big 12 title game? I honestly don't know. Got them at 20. Look at 21 through 25. Have LSU at 21. Another interesting team in my mind. They completely fell off the map last year. Now, I knew they were going to be Well, I knew they were going to take a few steps back after all the talent they lost after the national title season. I didn't think they were going to take that many steps back. They looked abysmal at times last year. Then for no reason, they beat Florida towards the end of the year. So an up and down type of thing for Ed Orgeron and LSU. Coaching changes. What are they going to do at the quarterback position? They played 3 or 4 different quarterbacks last year. LSU, again, go back to the beginning of the video when we showed the recruiting rankings and the talent indexes. They're at or near the top almost every year. So the talent is there. They lose Eric Gilbert to the transfer portal, which hurts. I think the best tight end in America next year. He's now at Florida to replace Kyle Pitts. No surprise there. LSU could finish in the top 10, couldn't they? Yeah. Or they could finish outside the top 25. Hard to figure the corn dog out this year. There's Arizona State. Again, probably the 3rd or 4th best team in the Pac-12. I've got Washington in there too. And then I round things out with Michigan and Oklahoma State. I've had Michigan ranked way too high almost every single year here on YouTube, so I'm just tired of being tricked by them. They're charlatans. They overpromise and underdeliver every single year. I'm not falling for it anymore. And then here's just a few teams that I considered in the top 25. You know how when you look at the poll, it's got the others receiving votes. This would be my others receiving votes. Auburn, Coastal Carolina, Northwestern, Ole Miss. Considered those teams in the 23, 24, 25 range. But that's it, my first preseason poll. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know where I'm wrong down below. And I'll see you again next time. Have a good morning,